So I've often preached about Our Lady because Our Lady is very dear to my heart and essential to the life of the church. I think, particularly this moment in the life of the church, the whole image of the moon, the crescent moon, which is on my coat of arms, reflecting a light that's not its own, but a
Right.
light that may not be visible in its source at any given. So you think of the darkness of the night, and in many ways, not to get melodramatic, but there is a darkness around us, and Our Lady shines forth. So this may be going far afield a bit, but to the extent that your studies have revealed anything in this regard, after the Lord rose from the dead, what role would Mary have played in the life of the church and the apostles? As
Yes.
do you have a sense from the scriptures or from the
Sure.
tradition?
Yeah, after our Lord's resurrection, she was a rallying point. This is reflected in Catholic art. When you think of the Pentecost, the typical scenes of the Pentecost, you see the 12 gathered around the Blessed Mother. Now, why do we not have more explicitly about her in, say, the epistles of Paul or the rest of the New Testament? That's because of her humility. Okay, like you said, she's reflecting a light not her own, so
Hmm.
she was always pointing everyone back to Christ, but she was this living maternal presence and a rallying point. And we do get actually a reflection of her in Revelation 12. And I'll never forget this because this played an important role in my own conversion. I was at the University of Notre Dame, and remember I mentioned that individual Michael, who eventually became my sponsor. Spoiler alert. Um, but Michael and I were sitting at the food court at the University of Notre Dame, and he had just defeated two of my major objections against the Catholic Church. And I was trying to think of something to nail him, and I saw a relief carving on the wall of the Blessed Mother and had an inscription saying, Mary, Queen of Heaven. And that gave me an idea because as a Protestant, I thought this title, Queen of Heaven, was almost blasphemous. So I attacked Michael. I said, can you give me any scriptural support for Mary as Queen of Heaven? And I was sure that there was none. But he said, well, what about Revelation 12? And I was taken aback because I didn't think of that. I'm like, Revelation who? He said, Revelation 12. Have you ever read it? Like, of course I've read it. Can't remember exactly what it says right now. So he pulled out his New Testament. We went there. And of course, that's the vision of the woman in the heavens, clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, with a crown of 12 stars. And then she gives birth to a male child destined to rule the nations with a rod of iron. Well, that's an allusion to Psalm 2. And Psalm 2 is predicting the son of David, who is, of course, Jesus. So you have a heavenly queen. She's wearing a crown of stars and she's in the heavens with the sun and the moon. And she gives birth to Jesus. And Michael's like, how can you deny that somehow that applies to the only woman in all of Scripture who gives birth to Jesus? And I was taken by like, I can't really deny that. That's definitely a strong possibility that it's speaking to something about her. And then when you go on in Revelation 12, I do think it relates to the Blessed Mother. And if we see what else it says about the woman there in that chapter, I would suggest that what it's reflecting is that she was a rallying point for the early Christian community. And when the early Christian community fled from Jerusalem, for example, to avoid the destruction of the city, I think the Blessed Mother went with them. And it's disguised and it's a little bit cryptic to because of her humility, and she didn't put herself forward. But traditionally, we understand the Book of Revelation was written by her, so to speak, adopted son, the Apostle
Hmm.
John, who was given to her as a son at the cross. And so it would be natural then that John would reflect upon her role in salvation history in the Book of Revelation.